I'm here alongside Cody Saftic, and it's a big weekend of mixed martial arts. Not only the UFC with a card on Sunday night, but Saturday night, Bellator has that night to themselves at the SAP Center in San Jose, California, as Fedor Emelianenko will be taking on Matt Mitrione in the main event. And Cody, I don't know if you saw the countdown show for this Bellator card on Saturday, but watching this countdown show, Fabio Maldonado does not exist in this world that Bellator has.
No, I don't even know if it's like we don't have the footage on it. It's like, let's just take that one back. We'll give Fedor a bye. Yeah.
It's the greatest heavyweight of all time. I cannot watch this fight not thinking of that Fabio Maldonado performance at all.
Yeah, fair enough. But people who watch all fights will also be like, well, you can't think about this fight without thinking about that Matt Mitrione versus Carl Sugumatafa fight. These are heavyweights, John. At the end of the day, anybody can just land that one shot and knock that other fighter out.
No. But in the last fight with Fedor, it was a light heavyweight coming up.
I know. A guy who in his previous outing at heavyweight against the current world champion Stipe lasted all of 39 seconds. We have to be excited to see Fedor Emelianenko back in action because they're not quite lying to you when they say the greatest heavyweight. When you think about the greatest heavyweight all time, the argument's still there. And I know people were at the time saying, well, Kane surpasses him. Has Kane really been in the limelight the last couple of years? Has he really done the same amount?
I think you could make a stronger argument for Verdum at this point than Cain Velasquez.
He submitted Cain Velasquez and he submitted Fedor Emelianenko. He has the bigger wins. But then you start thinking, okay, well, what has a guy like Junior Dos Santos has done? Well, he's knocked out Fabricio Verdum and he's knocked out Cain Velasquez. There's a lot of people in the talk. Fedor is the guy that was at least around for a decade at the top of his game. These guys, most heavyweights, they only have, it seems like, a smaller prime period of competing. So I do think he's one of the greatest of all times. I am excited to see him compete. And this is the first time in his entire career that he's the underdog going into this fight. So people are obviously writing him off because of the last performance. But once again, you look at Fedor, 40 years old. Is that the narrative here? Fedor, maybe he's too old. Less than 2 years older than Matt Mitrione, who clocks in at 38, turning 39 this year. It's not crazy to think that Fedor pulls this one off. I'm super excited.
Yeah, I think this is a very intriguing heavyweight main event. And also, I think this is really perception and reality of two fighters. I think with Fedor, and especially watching that countdown show, it's very much people have the pride version of Fedor in their mind. And with Matt Mitrione, I think they go back to the guy on The Ultimate Fighter. Very different fighters, both of them, in 2017. I think Matt Mitrione, he's someone that doesn't get a whole lot of credit for the success he has had and the improvements he has made for a guy that walked into the Ultimate Fighter house without any professional experience.
Nearly no professional experience. And I look back to a fight with him versus Roy Nelson in 2012. And that would be the key for Fedor to win. Go in there, close that distance, land that big shot, and put him down. Since 2012, the improvements that Mitrione has made. Because when you look at him coming from a raw athletic football talent, leaving the NFL, coming to MMA, he's very athletic. And heavyweight's that one division where you peak later on in your career. So despite him being 38, he makes improvements the whole way up. You can look at him in wins over Sean Jordan or Derek Lewis and see that this guy is the guy that if he was in the UFC would kind of still be a factor in their heavyweight division. He's still at the top of his game. So when you look at a heavyweight that's conceivably still in the top 15 in the world versus Fedor Emelianenko, I see why a lot of people are worried for Fedor, but it's a heavyweight fight, as I keep saying, and I think he's got the tools that he can land on Mitrione. And finally here, we've been seeing this kind of a little bit, when you're fighting your legend. I look at Derek Brunson in that fight against Anderson Silva from the weekend. He's fighting a legend. Maybe it's not a hero of his, maybe it is a hero of his, but he's fighting a guy that everyone kind of looks up to. There's no denying that Brunson fought far differently in that fight than he had in his previous 5 outings, which had all ended in the first round. He fought like a different man. You don't always respect the guy in front of you, but there's a chance that you do. When we look at Pat Barry versus Cro Cop, he drops Cro Cop. He allows Cro Cop to stand up because he has that respect for him. Glove taps him. Next thing you know, Cro Cop's on his back choking him out. You can't give them too much respect. And a guy like Fedor, he commands respect. Now, Fabio didn't give him that. He went into Russia, won the first round. Important to note, he didn't kick his ass the whole way through. He lost 2 and 3. It's just it should have been a 10-8 first round. I think everyone can agree on that. Nonetheless, Fedor is not completely shot. He does still have some tools in his toolkit, and I think that he can apply those against Mitrione. It's a close fight. It's a good heavyweight fight. And on a weekend where the UFC is on the Sunday, and they're not particularly putting on a gigantic event, it's a fight night locally from Halifax, I think this is the time for Bellator to put on a premier event like this and feature guys like Josh Thompson and Josh Koscheck and rise up some of your other talents and make a run for it, really make some noise.
Yeah, and I think that the Josh Thompson fight's very important because a win by Josh Thompson, that would theoretically set up a fight with Michael Chandler. But with Patricky Pitbull, I mean, that's that's a really intriguing fight, I feel, at lightweight.
Yeah, well, fair enough. And when you think about Patricky Freire, this is a guy that's been in Bellator for a long time, but I can't get out of my head that I believe you named it as knockout of the year.
It was my knockout of the year.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. That Michael Chandler fight zapped him. Now, at 31 years old, this was shocking to me. He's by far the youngest guy on the main card. Because you look at Fedor, who's 40, and Mitrione is 38, Koscheck is 39.
Wow.
Josh Thompson, his boyish good looks, do not be fooled, turning 39 this year as well.
Congo and Ollie Thompson, they're not bringing that average.
Congo, 41, and Ollie Thompson 37. So at 31, Patricky Freire's got more than enough in the gas tank. And Josh Thompson's been off for a little while now, over a year. And so when you think about going at his highest highs, I thought he beat Benson Henderson and probably should have won the UFC lightweight title.
Which, amazingly, that was 3 years ago.
3 years ago. He knocked out Nate Diaz, the only man to stop Nate Diaz due to strikes. At his highest highs, he's one of the best lightweights that has competed in a very long time. It's that because he's now 38 years old, because he now has a life outside of cage fighting, and because now he has taken more than a year off, a guy like Patricky Freire, who can stand and bang, has lots of power, has a black belt in BJJ, that can pose a lot of problems for a guy like that.
Yeah, also will be interesting to see kind of the audience that they get. They have this night to themselves. I think Fedor fighting on free television, that's still always of interest to people. Yes. That's why he is there in Bellator. And what comes out of this? Will there be more fights to be had for Fedor beyond just Matt Mitrione? Certainly, I don't know how much the win or the loss necessarily dictates that. I feel if he wants to fight, Bellator certainly is not going to say no to him. They would love to have him continue to fight regardless of a win or a loss on Saturday.
When you look at a track record of certain guys that they've put into the main event recently, yeah, I think Fedor Emelianenko is above that level. I think they put him back in. This is a guy that's actually technically won his last 6 fights in a row. So by no means do I think a loss here really affects him. It's that at 40 years old and at heavyweight, when he does lose, when you think about those Antonio Bigfoot Silva losses, when you think about that Fabio Maldonado fight, when you think about losing to Dan Henderson, he's taking a lot of damage. And at that point, you don't want to see your heroes get beat up. If it's a performance like Anderson Silva where he goes out and squeaks it out and it's a win, it's not interesting, you'll still watch him again. You just don't want to see him go and get beat up bad. And if Mitrione does that to him, it changes the talks a little bit. But there's no doubt that if Bellator was right, if this is pro wrestling, I think Fedor would be in for the win because you're going to gain more from that. But this is a fist fight, not pro wrestling. Anything can happen. And Matt Mitrione, more than capable of pulling off the victory.
The final point here with this main event, I mean, you do have Congo and Ollie Thompson on this card. And once Bellator got away from all the problems with Vitaly Minakov, do you feel their heavyweight division is now finding itself? You've got Quinton Jackson and King Mo who are also going to be fighting at heavyweight. I think Jackson's sticking around at heavyweight. That's at least a name you have. Do you feel this division is now starting to fill itself out? Because that has been, to me, a major void because of the way this title situation was and no one knew what was happening.
They're trying to fill it, obviously. They brought in Sergei Haratonov. It kind of backfired on them. They're trying to build guys up like Bobby Lashley. They're trying to build that upper echelon. Even a guy like Tony Johnson Jr., I'm a fan of, Satoshi Ishii. It would have been lovely if Krokop would have stuck around for a little bit longer and would have flattered an idea of fighting in Bellator. But I think that when you got a guy like Vitaly Minakov, in many ways it was like when they had Will Brooks as the champ at 155. He was so much better than everybody at 55 at that time. Maybe not leaps and bounds better than Chandler, but he had beat him twice and he stopped him the last time. You stop losing intrigue. Now, Congo lost to Vitaly Minakov. After that fight, Vitaly goes back. I don't know if he has visa problems, but he's back in Russia full time, not signed to Bellator. Now it starts to grow because now you start to get contenders. Now you start to get interesting matchups again. Guy like Yaila, has worked his way back into contention. These guys are all moving their way back up the ranks, and you start to fill it out a little bit. The problem is, like any heavyweight division, it's an old heavyweight division. So you need that young blood. And what Bellator has done exceptionally well, it will pay off down the road, is they're signing a plethora of NCAA division champions, guys that have All-Americans, guys that have won national titles D1, D2, guys like a Tyrell Fortune that will be good down the road. They're going to find the next Cole Conrad, who in my opinion was fantastic had he not retired to sell dairy equipment, I believe.
He's doing just fine.
He's doing more than just fine. You do not have to fight professionally to make money, people. But I regress. I think that Bellator is headed in the right direction.
All right, well, that's coming up Saturday night from San Jose, California. Fedor Emelianenko meets Matt Mitrione in heavyweight action.